In this video, I want to look at a metabolic marker called your blood glucose level. Effectively, how much sugar have you got floated in your blood? And it can get there from two different ways, believe it or not. It can get there from the food you've eaten, but it also, the body can release glucose, which is the sugar we're talking about, blood glucose level. The body can release it if you haven't eaten it. Why would the body do that? Well, glucose is the source of energy. The whole body runs on glucose. It can also run on ketones, but let's leave that for now. Glucose is the normal source of energy in a human body. In fact, it's a normal source of energy for plants and other animals too. It is the currency of energy. So you eat some food, particularly sugary things and carbohydrates, they'll turn into sugar, they will give you energy. You haven't eaten for a while, your body's depleted of energy, something called your glycogen stores are low, the body will release glucose. So it's a currency of energy, that's the thing to look at. But we also don't want too much of it in the bloodstream because too much of it is dangerous for health. Giving you an example, in your entire body, all 60,000 kilometers of blood vessels, of arteries and capillaries, you should only be having around the equivalent of, let's say you get a teaspoon of sugar, that 1 teaspoon of sugar is the entire amount of blood that should be suspended in your bloodstream right now. If that was 1.5 teaspoons of sugar, just that little tiny difference, and you went to your doctor many years ago, he would say, oh, you might be diabetic. Today we measure it a different way. We have something called a HbA1c score, but it's still about the same. So 1.5 teaspoons of sugar in your bloodstream over a long period of time as your base, you would be diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic. If you get to about 3, then you probably wouldn't be watching this video right now because 3 teaspoons can be absolutely fatal. We have this tight regulating amount of sugar that should be in our blood. We have to have some. That's why the body can make it if you're not eating it. If you have too much of it, we have to get rid of it. And we use the pancreas to release something called a hormone called insulin to get rid of it and to remove it. So it's a critical measurement. Yeah, one of the most important of all metabolic markers because the window of tolerance is incredibly small. If you wake up in the morning and you do a blood test, maybe you're wearing a continuous monitor or you've done a little finger prick, which doesn't hurt by the way, and you've looked at it, if you're above something called 5.5 millimoles per litre, that is back to that equivalent, by the way, of 1 teaspoon of sugar. That's effectively what that measurement is saying. If you're above that, that means that your body, your hormones aren't handling the sugar in the way it should. And if it's not handling it in the way it should, then what we've got to do is something about it. Yeah, we've got to look at lifestyle intervention, we've got to look at dietary interventions and change the diet because you really need to be in a resting state. That means you haven't eaten for say 8 to 12 hours. You know, you've woken up in the morning and that, or fasting state is probably a better way of saying it. In a fasted state, you need that blood sugar in your entire body to be less than the equivalent of about 1 teaspoon of sugar. I want to quickly touch on how the body keeps it at that level because that's also important. So you've just eaten a large baked potato. That'll turn into about 15 teaspoons of sugar once you've eaten it. Now, you've just heard you can only have 1 and 3 would kill you. So what happens is the pancreas releases insulin to grab the excess sugar and to store it as body fat, either in around the midriff or your muscles or even the liver itself. By the way, it's a bit dangerous, but this is what happens. So when you have too much carbs and too much sugary things, we're putting a lot of demand on the body. But the good news is it's brilliant and it's coping. So you wake up tomorrow, you measure it, you're still below that 1 teaspoon of sugar, the 5.5 millimoles. But over decades and over years, the body starts to break down and this thing called hormesis, which is the balance within the body, starts to falter. And that's when if you wake up in the morning and you've got blood sugar above 5.5 millimoles, that 1 teaspoon, let's say it's 6 or 6.2 or something like that. What does that mean? You haven't just eaten, so you've got high blood sugar a long time since you last ate. What does that mean? So it means that your cells in your body, not from head to toe, but certain cells must have become insulin resistant. They must have stopped listening to insulin, whose job it was to grab all that excess sugar and store it away as body fat. If all the cells were listening, you'd have woken up this morning and your blood glucose level would have been 5.5 or below, but it's higher. So the cells aren't taking in, they aren't accepting in all that excess sugar. So you have started to become insulin resistant. As you get more and more insulin resistant, of course, that leads to lots of things like obesity, type 2 diabetes. The ground is being set for other chronic diseases. So it's really important. If regularly now you're not at 5.5 or below, and certainly if you're waking up and you're in the 6s, you know the body's struggling to stay in homeostasis. It's struggling to keep things in balance. You know that you've now started to develop a bit of a metabolic condition. And rather than worrying about that, of course, the reason we do all these things as a preventative measure is an early warning sign that we're setting ourselves up for sort of, health issues further down the line, but we can improve them. So as you start to make changes to diet, in particularly cutting down the things that cause the high blood glucose levels, like your carbs and your sugars, as you start to improve that, hopefully you'll see your blood sugar drop. If you've got high blood pressure, you should also see your blood pressure start to drop. If you've got high triglycerides, that's the fat in your bloodstream, that should start to drop. All these metabolic markers will start to improve, but one of the great indications is, of course, your blood sugar level being too high.